Tara Reade, as many of you know, has made accusations against Joe Biden about sexual assault. Tara Reade has talked about this for years. Mainstream media, at least liberal mainstream media, has found multiple ways to try to silence Tara Reade. I really strongly believe, and I mentioned this to Matt Taibbi when he was here, I strongly believe she's one of the people that's probably suppressed heavily on Twitter. I also believe that she's suppressed heavily on YouTube, based on what I've seen when I search for her channel. But Tucker Carlson is giving Tara Reade that platform to talk about her story. In this recent interview, you're going to hear some of the things that has been done to her since she came forward about Joe Biden. Because a lot of people think it's just they hurt her credibility and that's it. Or some people think that they hurt her image and that's it. But did you know that they also went after Tara Reade financially? This is the bad part of the news that you're going to hear. And then after this clip, I have some good news for you in reference to Tara Reade and this situation. Let's dive in.
The neoliberal establishment has decided it can't win arguments. Nobody wants what they're selling at all, so why even bother to convince anybody? So instead, they're going right to force, and you're seeing that all over our country. And one of the ways they're inflicting force on people, inflicting pain, is through civil suits. Bring them to civil court, because anyone can file a lawsuit. And so there are a lot of well-funded lawsuits trying to shut people up or punish them for stepping out of line. And here's the latest example. This has not gotten enough coverage. So Tara Reade once worked for Joe Biden. He sexually assaulted her, and she made possibly the mistake of saying so out loud. You're not allowed to do that. So in retaliation against her, the New York Times posted her social security number on her website. Can you imagine the ramifications of that? So Tara Reade sued the New York Times because you can't put people's social security numbers on a website. But a federal judge has now ruled against Tara Reade and said that she has to pay the legal fees of the New York Times. So they're still trying to crush her.
This has been an ongoing situation. They are still coming after Tara Reade even today, just for coming forward. And this is why a lot of women do not come forward, especially if the perpetrator is someone that has a lot of power or is someone who is wealthy. I strongly believe, and I've said this before, that there are many more Tara Reades that have been assaulted by politicians, but they're afraid to speak up. Some of them see what is happening to Tara Reade all these years, still coming after her. To post someone's social security number on a website, you really got to be a shitty person. Excuse my language. Like, I really couldn't put it any nicer than that. That's really low, really low. Your social security number links to pretty much your entire identity. So posting her social security number, that actually put her at risk for identity theft. The New York Times did that. And people still consider them to be credible.
We think it's wrong. She joins us now. Thanks so much for coming on. Did I misstate any of that? I mean, it seems like you came out and accused the sitting president of a sex crime, and we've spoken at great length about this on the air, and I don't think there's any question that it happened. You said so at the time, and now they're trying to hurt you for saying that. That's what it looks like to me.
Yep.
Yes, this is just one of the many things that they've done, to try to silence me. But yeah, the lawsuit that I filed was because on the first story that they did, the New York Times, and they used me as basically a whipping post all of 2020 to try to silence and discredit me. But the first story was on Easter Sunday, and I was woken up very early in the morning by a friend who lived back east and said, hey, the online story on New York Times has your congressional ID showing your social security number. We need to get it down. It took a few hours. We got it down. And They did comply with taking it down, but it was very awful. So I did try to file a lawsuit. I lost. The judge ruled that it was in the public interest to print it, and I then was slapped with attorney's fees from New York Times, upwards close to over $71,000.
So they tried to silence her, and then when that didn't work completely, because people like Tucker Carlson are giving her a platform so people can hear her, then it's like, let's try to punish her financially. Let's come after her money. After coming forward about Joe Biden, Tara Reade had difficulty getting jobs. You guys know that? She had difficulty getting work. Then at one point, she was able to get employment. She was working with RT. I believe she was freelance at that time, but she was working with them. Then when the U.S. government, they shut down RT, then that was gone. Tara Reade is a mother. Like, it's just, this is crazy what they did to this woman. And I want to remind you something about Joe Biden. You always need to remember that it was Joe Biden that would not allow Anita Hill's witnesses to testify against Clarence Thomas. That was Joe Biden. So just keep that in mind when we talk about Joe.
Oh, yeah.
So you are not a rich person, I know from our conversations.
No.
So just two quick questions. How is it in the public's interest for the New York Times to publish your social security number of all private things?
Well, suddenly, I guess there was a great interest in freedom of speech, in freedom of the press. So freedom of the press would be the impetus for that, and sort of a more of a legal argument. And I don't want to bore your audience with all of that, but there's been different ways that the Biden administration has come after me. They've come after me with the DOJ, with sealed warrants on my Twitter, which are of record, and there's been a little bit of press about that. They took my communications on Twitter and all of that. So yeah, it's been watching Joe Biden take a wrecking ball to I've been experiencing this wrecking ball to my life, but now I've been watching the last couple of years take a wrecking ball to the United States, including the proxy war that Russia and that NATO is and U.S. is fighting against Russia, and upwards of $100 billion going over there when we have dire circumstances here. So all of those things that I talked about, that I criticized Joe Biden about, besides the awful experience of being sexually assaulted by him when I was a Senate staffer in 1993, people are seeing just the true Joe Biden of how corrupt this regime is. And if there needs to be any regime change, it doesn't need to be in other countries. It needs to happen here. Now,
I agree.
So
I want to remind everybody, if you're not aware of this, speaking of Joe Biden taking a wrecking ball to this country, it was just announced recently that millions of Americans are about to be kicked off of Medicaid because Joe Biden did not push back on the GOP legislation to end the pandemic emergency. So he took a wrecking ball to her life, and he's taking a wrecking ball to our lives right now. I don't care if he's Democrat, et cetera, whatever. These past couple years that Joe Biden has been in office, how has your life been financially? Look at the economy. While they sit there and continue to lie to the American people and say, lift half the kids out of poverty, then they ended the child tax credit abruptly. Look at what's happening. How much does food cost at the grocery store for you right now? How much are you paying for a carton of eggs? A wrecking ball to the entire country. And that is very well put.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're seeing how cruel and ruthless they are. And not only they don't believe all women, they will hurt women who disobey. And you're a perfect example.
And further, Tucker, the New York Times has become, the legacy media has become like an arm of the Biden administration, like the DOJ and the FBI. I mean, look at what just happened to Matt Taibbi, who testified about, the different ways that they were trying to suppress U.S. citizen speech and using taxpayer money to do it and control the conversation and control the narrative. He got visited by an IRS agent the day of his testimony. So
they send the IRS to your house.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. So we're all waiting for that. And I know that you are. You're living it now. Terry, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Now, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because I want to tell you the good news that I found out as well in reference to Tara Reade and her accusation against Joe Biden. Because it turns out that she actually ended up having some unlikely allies. Listen to this. This is good news. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz invite Biden accuser to Congress. Let's go on. Close this other window. This is a tiny font for me. Republicans Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz have invited a woman who alleges she was sexually assaulted by now President Joe Biden to Congress to give a transcribed interview regarding the claims. Guys, she never had the opportunity. Do you hear me? She never got the opportunity to testify in Congress. She told her story on mainstream media. They smeared her. They attacked her. And all that time, when Joe Biden was running for 2020, they never gave this woman the chance to tell her story. Not once. And look who is actually coming to help. The Democratic Party is done. I've said this before. They're done. The same party that was telling you to believe women. When Tara Reade came forward, all of a sudden, it was don't believe that one. Let's go on. Tara Reade, an author and podcast host, alleged in a 2019 first-person piece that Biden had made unwanted sexual advances on her while she was working in his Senate office as an intern in 1993. The story became a facet of his eventually successful presidential campaign in 2020. The news comes as House Republicans on the Oversight Committee have made investigating the Biden family, in particular its financial records, a priority after gaining the majority in the midterms. While Gaetz stressed the invitation was to get the facts, the move comes as Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, faces an investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney over allegations of hush money payments during the 2016 election, a move which has been accused by his allies of being politically motivated. Let's go on. Speaking on his Firebrand podcast on Wednesday, the representative for Florida said President Trump might not be the only person answering questions about prior conduct. Reade was among several women to accuse Biden of inappropriate physical contact, and in an account for the Union, claimed Biden would touch me on the shoulder or hold his hand on my shoulder, running his index finger. Gotta be careful what I say on here, but you can see that there. In April 2020, she told the New York Times that in 1993, Biden pinned her to a wall and did what he did. I gotta be careful what I say here. Biden denied the allegations at the time. Biden's response was, this never happened. While the details of these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault are complicated, two things are not complicated. One is that women deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and when they step forward, they should be heard, not silenced. The second is that their stories should be subject to appropriate inquiry and scrutiny. Boy, I tell you. On March 20th, Reade tweeted at Greene and Gaetz asking when Biden would be investigated over her allegations, noting, I am not a former porn star, nor did I receive hush money, alluding to the investigation into Trump. The same day, Greene, a GOP representative for Georgia, responded that it was time to take a stand against the two-tiered injustice system and invited her to Washington, D.C. to speak with us. Gaetz took to his podcast on Wednesday to announce that James Comer, the House Oversight Committee chair, had told the two members of Congress they were fully authorized to bring in Tara Reade to take her transcribed interview, to get the facts and to understand what really happened with Joe Biden. Congresswoman Green saw this tweet and she felt as though we ought to get the answers. Now, no person's allegation should be taken at face value. There has to be review. There has to be corroboration. Gates recounted the allegation that Biden violently sexually assaulted her in the Capitol building while she was trying to physically resist him, that he did very terrible things to her. Questions have previously been raised about Reade's account. The New York Times said former staffers in Biden's Senate office could not recall the alleged incident, nor any of the behavior Reade alleged. Yeah, that's probably because they were spoken to. Someone got to them. Keep your mouth shut or I'll end your career too. It goes on to say, here we go. Alleged, while PBS said of 74 former Biden staffers, it spoke to 62, of whom were women. None said they had experienced sexual harassment, assault, or inappropriate behavior, nor heard the rumors and allegations against Biden. Several outlets noted that Reade's account of her time in Biden's office had changed. CNN reported that she previously said she left Washington, D.C. for reasons unrelated to Biden, but later said she left over the allegations of sexual harassment. See how they tried to come after her? How they tried to smear her? This is what they do. And make no mistake, if this accusation were about a Republican politician, CNN, MSNBC, they would be backing Tara Reade. For the people who ask, why is Tara Reade going on to Tucker Carlson? Because CNN won't bring her on. Because MSNBC won't bring her on. This is how bad it is now. That's why I say that they're supposed to do news. That's news. Let's go on. In the 2020 statement, Biden referenced the numerous former staffers who had been unable to corroborate her account. Responsible news organizations should examine and evaluate the full and growing record of inconsistencies in her story. Let's highlight this right here because I'm about to debunk something here. Record of inconsistencies in her story. It is not uncommon for someone who is a survivor of sexual assault, any type of sexual trauma, to have this happen. Professor Zinkis talks about this so well. That is not uncommon because when people go through trauma, the brain has a way of repressing certain information about that event. CNN isn't going to tell you that. CNN didn't reach out to Professor Zinkis and ask him, let's talk about trauma. Is this usual for this to happen? No. Let's go on. In December 2022, Reade told Newsweek she would not be silenced and was willing to go under oath and testify to what happened in 1993. And that's the thing. She was willing to go under oath. Another thing that they've been saying that is false, by the way. People are saying, well, why didn't she report it after it happened? First of all, there's no timeline. And then second of all, she did. So I sincerely hope that Tara Reade finally gets the justice that she's owed. I sincerely do. So the good news is she has been invited there. But it's long overdue. Long overdue. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Yep X. You know things are messed up when Tucker Carlson, of all people, is periodically speaking the truth and doing actual news stories. Laura said, sad but true, Tucker is the only mainstream platform that gives women a voice. Betsy said, I never forgave Joe for the way he threw Anita Hill under the bus. Somehow loads of my progressive friends did, though. Yeah, Anita Hill, for those who are not aware, she's a professor here in Massachusetts. Last time I checked, she was teaching at Brandeis. But she's still around. And thank you for the super chat, YepX, as well. When it comes to our government censoring people, spying, violating people's civil liberties, let's not forget about Executive Order 12333, FISA, Biden's Disinformation Governance Board, which failed to pass, and now the Restrict Act. That's right. And thank you for the super chat, Marvin. Appreciate you, Sabby. Keep truth coming. I appreciate you too. I just hope she gets some type of justice now, because this has been going on for years.